Watercress. Watercress had never been so anxious than when the crusade party had turned to march toward the capital kingdom's capital city, Athlia. Not when he had left Basil by himself for the first time, not when he had let Basil trudge across Sithica alone, not even when they had departed from Sithica's borders. As they neared the castle, he was petrified, and it had been such a long time since he had felt terror that he did not know how to ease the feeling. Poppy would tell him that it was time his vein of luck had run dry, with her usual impotent expression. He would normally scoff at the remark, but for now, the weight of the truth suffocated him. He doubted he would succeed in claiming that Basil was treating a patient for the entire duration of the Crusade's stay at the impenetrable castle's doorstep. Someone would notice. Watercress racked his brain during the march on what to do. It was Basil who came up with a solution, however, during one of their evening conversations. What if Teleos stood in my place? The fisherman's son? Yes, he doesn't have to work his usual duties this time around. He's been gloating nearly the whole crusade about it. I doubt he'd pass as a mage's apprentice. Whenever you've presented me to someone, we mostly just smiled at one another. Teleos wouldn't need to demonstrate his abilities. Who in Athlia would even need tending? They have enough healing mages already, don't they? Watercress considered it wasn't a terrible idea. It wasn't great, but it was better than guiding Basil into the High King's castle in front of a dozen or so other mages under Panite's command. I suppose the reason you don't want me to enter the impenetrable castle is the same reason as everything else. Basil's tone was flat with assumption. Yes. The thing you lied to the High King about. Yes. Watercress's mouth drew into a tight line. So the castle is the most dangerous place for either of us if I'm found out. Nowhere else could be more perilous. I'd be risking both of our lives by entering. Basil's daring words clashed with his melancholy tone. Yes. I suppose I ought to do a masterful job hiding outside the castle then. Wouldn't want someone to notice I wasn't with you. Watercress nodded. At least Basil understood the gravity of the situation, and was taking it seriously. After that, it'll only be safer from there. Watercress grunted in agreement. In the brief silence between them, Basil stroked a sunset-orange salamander. Watercress had noticed the fire elemental following Basil. In the Devorian heat, it existed in its true form of a living flame. But in Watercress's weather barriers, it adopted a mortal form to follow the young archspawn. It was curious to Watercress that Basil's animal companion would be a fire elemental. Morbidly, he considered how difficult it would be to summon Basil in the ages following his death. Someone would have to persuade a living flame to adopt a mortal form before betraying it to sacrifice some part of it for the summoning ritual. It wouldn't be worth it to Watercress. He'd prefer to take on the Raven Basilisk twice rather than befriending an elemental. At least Basil could have a long existence after death if he so chose it. The elemental had impacted Basil's mood. Where raising 9 and becoming infatuated with Celestine had boosted his confidence and lifted his spirits, he now emanated constant self-assurance. Resulting phantom flames of a light yellow hue blazed down his arms and legs. Will the flames ever disappear? It would be impossible to pass Basil off as anything other than a spawn. The change was the main reason why Watercress needed a substitute apprentice, regardless of whether the muster occurred inside or outside the impenetrable castle's walls. Why did her eye come to me? Basil stroked the salamander. Specifically her eye. I don't know. Perhaps they were lonely. Perhaps they like to surround themselves with company that reminds them of their nature. What is the nature of the fire elemental? Life-giving, spirited, radiant, sometimes brash. Watercress cracked a smile. Basil gave him an odd look. I wouldn't describe myself like that. I would, especially the brash part. Spirited? Spirited, stubborn, there's a fine line. Watercress joked. Radiant? Basil raised a brow. Infectiously happy. That's certainly not me, Basil said. Not always, but recently. Basil reflected, and a small smile touched his lips. I have been happy lately. The flames danced along his arms and legs, spreading to his back in a display of beautiful flaming feathers. In documented spawn wing theory, peacock feathers marked true happiness, and flames were associated with fury. But Basil's golden plumage proved that the convention required updating. Basil huffed and glanced away. I don't ever want the crusade to end. I want to march around the realm with everyone for the rest of my days. We will likely reach the northern border within the next few turns of the moons, Watercress reminded. Are you prepared for all that may happen? Like what? Delicately, Watercress said. The loss of a friend. Basil's face strained of his prior amusement. It's a realistic possibility. Watercress laid a comforting hand on his apprentice's shoulder. As the priests have claimed, the crusade is going to free Asiel's homeland from the Rhysiclae and rescue our brothers and sisters of angelism. If humans and Rhysiclae are to engage in an armed conflict, there will be blood. Both sides are fighting to maintain their livelihoods. Both will fight with righteousness in their hearts, and both will believe their religious entities to be with them in their quest to spread their respective senses of morality. You're starting to sound like Faith. Basil's voice cracked when he spoke. She explained about the gods in the Rhysiclae's religion of Rakhism. Have you still been attending the services? Watercress asked. Occasionally, much less often now that the Gian priest Creed has joined us. I don't like his sermons. He preaches that the only way to maintain a healthy mind is to empty one's cognizance of all thoughts, doubts, and questions. According to Creed, the fewer ideas one thinks per day, the better off they are. To just let the angels guide the kings and queens on what to do and not worry about anything ever. He calls for blind loyalty and absolute submission. He also tries to claim that certain physical indulgences are sinful, which is in direct conflict with angelism's doctrine of maintaining a healthy body. What do faith and ethics say? They're usually shaking their heads while he speaks, annoyed with his interpretation of the holy texts. The following night, when it's their turn to lead a service, they'll undercut everything he's just filled everyone's heads with. But it's hard for them to reach everyone. When it was just the 2,000 troops from Vetron, it was much more manageable to provide a service. You remember, it was practically impossible not to listen to it. But now there are so many soldiers that some people are only receiving his twisted version of our religion. Can I tell you something without you getting angry? I'll try my best, but I am spirited and sometimes brash, after all. You never know. Watercress ignored the jest. The authors of The Life and Times of Asiel would very likely view the way faith, ethic, and creed preach, and say the same. All three of them are twisting the religion that the originators of angelism had witnessed come into the world. Basil opened and closed his mouth in confusion, and his eyebrows knit together. What? That's the impression I've always been under. Angelism is supposed to be how faith and ethic teach. I never taught you much of angelism, but it's true. Time has butchered the original religion. 6,000 rotations ago, Asiel's name was Akol. Our ancestors didn't name the first son after a variant of his name. They named it after him. During the Third Age, priests expanded his name to sound less primitive. They wanted a more pretentious-sounding archspawn, so it would become an important status symbol for the population to convert to angelism from spiriticism or naturism. What a foolish reason to change a name. No wonder he never answers anyone's prayers. If it were me, I wouldn't if someone in another few ages changed my name. You've become fonder of it then. Your name. The context helps. But we were discussing time-mangling religion. Although you're wrong to claim time does it, the last example was clearly people choosing to change it. Almost everything you know about angelism has been slowly built up and tacked on through the ages. The message for someone to maintain a healthy body was only introduced to encourage workers to become stronger and to improve their production capabilities. Essentially, the only core message that Asiel proclaimed was for people to treat all of their neighbors, both foreign and familiar, as their Sekoli. Was Asiel a Carrie? Basil asked, flabbergasted by the knowledge. Not exactly, but the Carrie tribes stemmed from Asiel's and developed separately from the rest of the realm. Some cultural traditions remained, some did not. Arguably, the Carrie's religious traditions are the purest form of angelism. But it's not necessarily bad for a religion to evolve. It's just important to keep in mind that it does happen. We're going to fight a war over the siege of a hometown of an archangel that people don't even know the true name of, or recognize what he personally stood for, Basil said in dismay. If that were the only reason, you'd be right. Thankfully, it's not so irrational, Watercress assured. Rhysiclae are natural predators to humans. If they build up their ranks as they have in previous ages, they pose a threat to the survival of our species. Aren't the Rhysiclae our neighbors? Aren't we supposed to treat them as such? When they can be reasoned with, yes. When the heads of their city-states speak for their masses, yes. When they satiate their hunger in peaceful ways, yes. When we can reach a reasonable peace, we should do everything to strive for it. But when their relationship turns predatory, then no. Asiel never stood for such behavior, neither from humans nor any other species, as we should not. How do you know so much about Asiel? Basil asked. Watercress half considered telling his apprentice his tales with poppy and turmeric and clove and the rest of his friends from the college, but he decided to wait until he told Basil the truth of his apprentice's birth. I've read through many rare, ancient books at the Mage's College. It took time piecing together the truth, but it's all there. It's much easier to locate the clues when one knows what the answer is already. That's amazing. If I had realized you were so interested in religious discussion, I would have dedicated more of your studies to it, Watercress said. It's for the best you didn't. I've only taken an interest because I was ready to become receptive to it, and because I attended the services between overhearing them from my tent and to appease rescission. If you had taught me more than you had, I would have outright rejected it, knowing myself. It's astonishing how much Basil's grown, and practically unaided. This sort of self-awareness is what I had always hoped for. I'm so proud of him. To return to my previous point, I was going to say that religion growing and adapting to changing times is not a foul notion. Aside from knowing that change occurs, it is essential to recognize why each tenet of your beliefs matters to you. Is it important because that's what the holy texts say verbatim? Is it important because that's what your father believed and you want to honor his memory? Is it important because it was important to your ancestors? Is it important because your priest told you it was? So long as you are aware of the why, and it does not harm others, it's fine to believe whatever you like. So, you can share faiths and ethics viewpoints. You can disagree with creed. None of them are inherently wrong, though. They just have different perspectives. I understand, Basil said. Good. So long as you do, it will be much more difficult to be manipulated by religious figureheads. You were just saying all views could be equally valid. Basil's brows knit together again. In theory, that could be true. That doesn't mean that all priests and priestesses have pure intentions when spreading their messages. Question what they say. Knowing why you believe certain notions and being skeptical of your thoughts and beliefs are invaluable traits. Refusing to accept a leader's word at face value will get you far in this life. As long as a priest isn't predatory, their views are likely worth considering, Basil concluded, even if I don't agree with them. The trick is to identify when they're trying to be manipulative and when they're heartfelt. Then I can decide whether to add their beliefs to my own. That summarizes it. I still think Creed is being manipulative, but I appreciate the discussion. I should probably return soon. Of course, you have to train time. Before you go, how has the spell tome been coming along? I only have a quarter left. I learned how to sleep read, as you suggested. It took some practice, but I'm pretty good at it now. I'm ecstatic to hear it. Would you like to cast the Barrier of Health spell once you finish it, then? I'll try it out when the time comes. But you'll have to be careful. If you keep writing spell tomes for all of your sorcery, then I'll be as powerful as you someday. Basil, in your own way, you already are. But if your dream is to become a powerful healing mage, then I will continue authoring tomes to increase your repertoire of spells. In the meanwhile, I have another for you to learn. Although, I recommend enjoying a few nights of normal dreams. Your mind needs to rest on occasion, even if your body is well rested. Healthy mind, healthy spirit, right? Watercress handed Basil a weather spell tome. I can't learn this, Basil said hesitantly. I don't know anything about weather magic. I didn't either before I wrote it. I learned the underlying science through practicing with my sorcery, and have transcribed it into the holy text for you. I do not doubt you can learn it. You know all the words. Weather dynamics will be difficult, but you are bright. I know you can do it. And if there's anything you have a question about, you know where my tent will be. You understand why I'm providing you this. Yes, when we split from the main group, we'll have a chance in surviving on our own in the harsh climates between weather barriers. With both the Barrier of Health tome and this one of weather, you're giving me our best chance at succeeding in our task. Watercress nodded. You can either take the book or flip through it here. I have no preference. It's inked into my memory either way. Basil carefully accepted the tome from his master's hands. Just when I was nearly done with the last one. Almost. You better be writing a defensive tome next. Basil neared the tent flaps. Why is that? Because the enchantment surrounding my skin can't protect me forever. If the holy stone in your knife's pommel ever breaks, then the magic has saved your life and is no longer in effect. Until then, the enchantment should hold against innumerable superficial wounds. I figured it would be useless to enchant the skin itself due to the high cellular turnover rate. It was clever to enchant something you knew I'd always carry, Basil said. Thank you again for the tome. I'll explain the situation for the impenetrable castle to everyone under a sound barrier. Watercress grinned. I will speak with you again later, Basil. Watercress felt no relief when the crusade passed from the scorched lands of Devor to the forested outskirts of Coserai. Though Watercress could relax his sorcery, he would not relax his mind. The Major General's bickering only fostered his anxiety. D2, D3, and D4 marched on the front line, and D11, Watercress, and F7 were in the second row. This time, Celestine paraded toward the front for their ceremonial entrance, but she was a few lines back for her safety.
Oh, the verdant kingdom of Coserai. It reminds me of home.
D3, the Ikazuish Major General, admired the green leafing trees surrounding them.
Though not quite as beautiful, nothing can top Trelia. It'll be good to join with the Coserai forces and continue to Bavati. Every time I read the news now, Sylvain's in a new dire situation, D4 said.
It's almost as if the vampires are a serious threat, and we need as many troops as we can get. D11, the Gian Major General, mocked D2, the Devorian officer knight, directly behind his back regarding his kingdom's poor attendance in the crusade. D2 sneered and turned his head to face him.
Last I checked, Devor still sent more soldiers than Gia did.
D11, that's a rather bold comment.
D3 tried to diffuse the tension with a kindly tone.
D1 will be joining us shortly to take command, and we should avoid insulting our superiors, especially when they're leading the entire crusade party, don't you agree?
D4 mouthed the curse under his breath. Ever since the crusade had grouped with the Devorian forces, frictions strained worse than pulling a deep root from the ground.
The resupply will do good for everyone's spirits, D3 continued. We're all just in need of a feast. I'm sure once we've set to dine at the High King's table, we'll all be jesting in merriment.
Unlikely. Watercress would not interject his opinion, though.
It's too bad we've missed the Festival of the Wyvern. I've always heard its banquet is unparalleled, D3 said.
The festivals to the archdemons should be outlawed. It gives the impression that the patron kingdoms are a bunch of demon worshippers. D11 hadn't called D2 out again, but he might as well have. Of the four major generals representing Vetron, Ikazu, Gia, and Devor, D2 was the only one to come from a kingdom that had an archdemon as its patron archspawn. Ikazu had Losihei, Gia had Boya, and, as everyone currently believed, Vetron would have either once he died, and was reborn as an archangel.
We can't control where the archspawn are born, especially from ages past.
D2 swept another dangerous side glance to D11.
Sure, but no one has to celebrate them,
D11 retorted.
Come, man, D3 said. It's tradition. We'd be forsaking our ancestors if we didn't. It's more about lamenting the faith of their souls anyway. Besides, everyone should have a celebration every now and again, regardless of the occasion. It helps with the morale of the kingdom.
Interesting way to mourn the dead, with large spectacles and fine delicacies,
D11 said. Anyway, everyone celebrates the remembrance days of the old wars and the establishment of the joining of the realm. How many more holidays does a kingdom need? In Vetron, we've been yearning to have a festival of our own. Sylvain's undoubtedly weary of sharing the festival of the Elder Deer with us, and for those who take part in our neighbor's celebration, Ikazu probably wants the festival of the peacock for themselves.
Nonsense! We're more than happy to welcome anyone who wishes to honor our beautiful Losihei. And don't fret about Sylvain. They've been sharing their holiday since the First Age. They're used to it. It's more of an expectation, really, even if we decorate our towns with staghorns and white streamers for it. D3 made sweeping gestures as if imagining what Trelia would look like.
Vitron won't have much longer to wait to get their own festival, D11 said. Watercress waited for him to continue. What? D4 asked. D11 quickly explained. None of us will be around for it, but compared to our entire history, it's relatively soon. Either has another 80 rotations or so? If he ever picks his legendary creature, we could at least know what the future festival will be named before we die. How morbid. D4 turned away. Will it be the Festival of the Fire Elemental? That might be too long. I could see it being shortened to the Festival of the Elemental, or just the Festival of Fire. Watercress smiled while thinking about it. Does the impending death of our Archspawn amuse you, Watercress? D11 narrowed his eyes. He dropped his expression. No, I was just considering the legendary creatures. They're magnificent. There's nothing so precious as a peacock. Right you are, Watercress, D3 exclaimed. A man of great taste. Oh, I could not be happier to hear you say that. We're in good company. D4 raised an eyebrow, and D2 kept his stern face pointed forward. Well, the festivals to the archdemons should be outlawed, and if I have a chance to speak to the High King, then I'm going to tell him that, D11 said. Do whatever you want, D4 said. Watercress hadn't wanted to speak at an inopportune time, but there was one matter he had intended to mention. When you all work with D1 to integrate the Coserai troops, I was wondering if the last line of soldiers could remain the last again. Don't worry, Watercress. We'll vouch for Basil to stick with his friends. The good lad. D3 bobbed his head with a big smile. One new line of privates versus another doesn't make a difference. D4 gave a curt nod. D11 looked away with disinterest, and D2 didn't register his comment at all. Thank you. My apprentice and I are grateful. I'm worried about what would happen if they split and Celestine had Basil alone. Around the others, she must temper herself. Through the dogwoods, Watercress witnessed the immaculate black granite towers of the impenetrable castle come into view. By reputation, the girthiest center tower housed the activities of the High King. Rumors claim that the center tower balanced on an infinitesimally small point, an architectural feat to reflect the delicacy of managing the realm. Watercress's opinions were more cynical. The feature symbolizes the monarch's over-reliance on mages. Though the canopies of the trees made it difficult to see the full skyline of the impending castle, the bits Watercress glimpsed were enough on their own. At the current distance, the flanking towers yielded the castle's only sign of depth. Each tower had a stone wyvern perched at its peak, overlooking the respective direction of the realm it faced. Snarling expressions carved into the statues greeted all who approached, and Watercress was grateful Basil would not enter the castle. When the crusade crossed the last line of trees before a massive clearing, only part of the city-sized castle appeared before them. They were so close that the monstrous outer wall blocked the view of the farthest towers. No ornamentals decorated the walls. The only interruption in the solid blocks of granite were thin arrow slots at the tops of the barriers. Even in the light of day, the castle exuded an unnerving feeling. A large section of the wall turned intangible upon D2's approach. Commoners peeled away from the nobles. The former set up the camp in the clearing, while the latter passed into Athlia's borders. Watercress followed the noble major generals through the logically laid out marketplace on their way to the castle's inner layers. The Crusaders received applause and cheers from the city folk. D3 smiled and waved at the people around them, while the other major generals mostly ignored them. They approached the next granite wall, marked with a black, white, and bright crimson banner, hanging atop an image of an ornate door carved and filled in with silver molding. The silver and granite of the door turned intangible to allow the Crusade's nobles into the castle's interior. 2 sculpted macabre wyverns glared down at those who entered the dimly lit castle corridors, their white quartz eyes judging them as they passed the threshold. The wyverns flanked the majestic staircase that presumably led to the High King's tower. Their tails snaked along the base as if waiting to trip any who did not clear their scrutiny. A vizier awaited their arrival and stepped forward to speak with D2. While they exchanged hushed words, Watercress experienced an intense sense of dysphagia. He hallucinated tasting a flavor he could not place without laboriously flipping through his memories, which he hadn't time for. The 4 major generals all briefly greeted the bureaucrat named Admonition. The High Vizier led their massive group up the regal staircase, across a long, bridging corridor, and up another flight of stairs into an inner chamber through another defensive mage's barrier of sealed stone. In the ghoulish azure darkness, it was strenuous to discern where the other stairs and halls led, but Watercress could get an idea based on the movements of the servants as they stalked around corridors. There were at least 7 floors below them, but that was his eyes' deciphering limit. He assumed there were likely additional ones below that. Above them, he distinguished the same. The farther into the castle they entered, the stronger the feeling of dysphagia became. Watercress rubbed his tongue against the roof of his mouth to wipe away the sensation, but it hadn't helped. A sweat droplet dripped down Watercress's neck and back as they approached the throne room. It tickled his hairs and stood on end. He wanted to wipe it away, but resisted appearing nervous in the foreign place. The anticipation was maddening. He did his best to keep his mind clear and his breathing steady, but his body's systems betrayed him, and his agitation grew. They're going to discover my lie. A third defensive mage turned the final space between the inner castle and the throne room intangible. With so many separate layers of defensive mages, it would be an effort to enter against the will of a king, but it would also be just as difficult to escape. Again, the throne room was dimly lit with blue light, but in place of silver sconces hung chandeliers of coiled metal wyverns, gasping out blue flames. A deep blue velvet rug lined the prolonged path forward, followed by mirrors that stretched the lengthy span floor to ceiling, magnifying the wyvern's flames and making the throne room seem larger than it was. The effect was disorienting. Silver knights of the Imperial Guard stood a few paces in front of the mirrors, and out of line with their counterparts on the other side of the room, so their reflections looked as if an entire army filled the throne room. That must be intentional. Admonition slinked ahead of the crusade leaders to take his place, standing hunched over the left of the throne. After D2, D3, D4, and D11 approached the High King and presented themselves, it was Watercress's turn. Watercress did his best not to look alarmed. In fact, he was amused by D11's plea to abandon the demonic festivals, which the king rejected. High King Panade of Athlia, I present myself, Master Watercress of Fonston, graduated apprentice to low healing mage, Master Annis of Safai, to you. I am in your service if you require my skills as a healing mage for the duration of our stay, Watercress said. After he spewed the long-rehearsed line, he dared to look up. Perched between 2 bowing stone wyverns sat the High King on his throne. Panade hadn't aged since Watercress had last seen him, and he had a calculating look in his eyes. The last time we met, you were the same age Ether is now. The High King gestured to an adolescent lurking in the shadows of the throne room, at Panade's left-hand side. Don't look so surprised. You were the youngest mage there. You left an impression. Once Panade noted Ether's presence, a sense of intrigue fell over the nobles in the front. A frenzy of whispers trailed into the back lines. I appreciate your highness's kind words. Watercress expected to move on, but the High King continued. I've read some of your research, and Master Gentian praises the spell tomes you've written. I've learned firsthand the benefits of having dual-hatted sorcerer wizards on my staff of mages. Would you consider working in the impenetrable castle after the crusade? What does he want? What does he know? Watercress treaded as lightly as possible in his reply. You honor me with such an offer. I admit the notion is tempting and gives me great pause. I would wait until I have survived the crusade to provide you an answer. Watercress swallowed, only to find his mouth had gone dry. It doesn't make sense for Panade to offer me a position now, of all times. He just conducted a mage's audit to rid himself of his extraneous mages. Why would he seek additional ones? Perhaps he cut too many and needs to replace his staff. Or maybe this is something else entirely. I respect your hesitation, and I eagerly await a reply. Tell me, where is your apprentice? He is supposed to be in attendance too, is he not? Admonition looked over his notes and nodded once at the High King. Basil has marched separately from me toward the back lines for the duration of the crusade. He may choose to treat our critical patients now that we have paused. He is aware of his social obligation, and will be in attendance by the end of the line.
That's curious, Watercress.
Jasmine claimed Basil was so busy treating patients in Gia that he never met with her. Ideally, he won't be so busy here. Yarrow's accusatory voice echoed from a doorway to the left behind the king's throne before he came into view. The others behind Watercress continued their whispers, but he assumed they were murmuring about Ether still, rather than Basil.
Our journey has been strenuous. It has taken a physical toll on the regional soldiers already. Granted, I have lectured him on the insolence to Master Jasmine. I am certain he will present himself shortly.
Why is Yarrow so confrontational? Perhaps Clove was right to doubt him.
Curious that your apprentice would have been raised to have been so audacious.
Yarrow, save your squabbling. We'll never finish with the presentations at this rate. Take your conversation into the cocktail parlor, Panite said.
Of course, Your Highness. Yarrow bowed and led Watercress into the door he had just come from. Watercress avoided looking at the High King again as he skirted around the extended wings of one of the wyvern statues. He did chance a glance at Ether and gave him a small smile as he passed. Ether's spindly wings were pathetically small, probably indicative of his repressed life in the castle. How Watercress pitied the poor boy and his heartbroken mother after all this time. I wonder if he's ever met her, or his father. Once they cleared the throne room, Watercress refocused.
It's good to see you again, Master Yarrow. I was disappointed when I read your letter. I was hoping there might have been an update since you sent it.
They took a position at a silver table, far away from the gathered major generals.
No, I can't say there has been.
Yarrow looked at Watercress disdainfully.
I will have you know that I have jointly penned a tome with the High Combative Mage, however. The college librarians hailed it as a revolutionary contribution to healing and architectural wizardry.
Yarrow's behavior can't be coincidental. He is generally unpleasant, but not to the level of shaming someone in front of the High King. Furthermore, if Yarrow is not to be trusted, and if he collaborated with Master Plume, is she not to be trusted either? Yarrow certainly doesn't know the holy language, so perhaps he used her for her knowledge of it. I wouldn't have known about his disposition if Clove hadn't warned me. Maybe she fell prey to the same admiring naivete. Regardless, if I attack his claim of penning a tome, it won't lessen his suspicions. It would only cement them. I'm delighted to learn that. I'll have to hire a college scribe to add a copy to my collection. I must ask, though, is something wrong?
Blue flames flickered in Yarrow's eyes.
I am skeptical about your intentions.
My intentions?
It is an interesting coincidence that rumors of Ether spread while your apprentice disappears from public view and while you share these tales of Vahantry activities. If I didn't know better, I'd say you were hiding something, trying to misdirect mages' focuses onto another target rather than say, your apprentice. Because I suspect Basil is truly the Archspawn.
Yarrow's face froze in a snarl as if to claim victory.
Oh dear.
Watercress feigned merriment and admiration.
Yarrow, is that what you think? That's absurd. That would be impossible. He would have been noticed long ago. Vetron has a surplus of mages. Perhaps not as many as Athlia, but still. Besides, when in Trelia, Basil met Poppy and Sage. More so, you will meet him for yourself later. I appreciate your mind's imagination. You've always thought differently than others, and I have respected you for that. It was why I wanted to work with you all those rotations ago.
Until Watercress was confronted with solid proof, he would deny any such claims about Basil. He had plenty of time to consider possible responses to such allegations throughout the march thus far. He had prepared for various scenarios accordingly.
I'm still terrified he'll see through it, or someone else will.
Yarrow's smug expression drained.
Has that been the reason for this hostility? I may have been capricious in my youth, but never an outright traitor. I hoped you would have had a higher opinion of me.
Yarrow composed himself.
If it is as you say, then we will verify it, if he comes.
You are setting yourself up for disappointment. It will likely be a while until Basil gets through the line, especially since he is at the end of it. But I've been excited to introduce him to all of my colleagues. I've been anticipating your meeting specifically. I'm sure he'll be excited to meet you too.
It left a remarkably empty hole in Watercress to think how he would believe that statement to still be valid if Clove hadn't shattered Watercress's long-held illusion.
If Yarrow despised me so, had he been forthcoming in the information about the Vahantry, or would he lie in paltry retaliation? Yarrow didn't reply. With the presentation of Teleost in Basil's place, Watercress hoped it would be confirmed. Lords, I will admit this ever-growing crusade party is an exhausting effort to maintain.
You managed 1 million citizens in Sithica. I don't see how 10,000 could be a challenge.
Almost none of them were fit for a journey of this sort, Watercress said, especially the nobles and Sithica-born. Most of them have either traveled exclusively by transportation mage or not at all. We receive frequent requests to heal blisters, broken bones, hurting joints, and newly discovered cardiac problems.
The priests must be disappointed that the greatest among us aren't taking one of the core tenets of the faith to heart, maintaining corporeal fitness and whatnot.
I wouldn't presume to speak for the leaders of the faith.
Regardless, the barriers of health wouldn't protect against such injuries, Yarrow agreed.
I know, and I do appreciate the new challenges posed by tending to the aching soldiers.
You wouldn't like it here, then.
Why is that?
All the ailments I deal with are routine and trite.
Yarrow picked at his teeth with a fingernail. In a city of this size? Yarrow flicked a small yellow fleck onto the floor. Yarrow resents that the High King extended me an offer of employment. He wouldn't dissuade me from it otherwise.
Watercress saw Brusite and Anates filter in and inconspicuously linger close to Yarrow and himself as planned. When Teleost entered wearing Basil's clothes, Time trailed him to their table.
Basil, Watercress greeted, I'd like for you to meet my research advisor, Master Yarrow. You too, Time. Respectively, they are my apprentice and my grand apprentice.
Teleost smiled and grasped the healing mage's forearm, trying to portray Basil's friendly disposition. You have curiously rough hands.
Yarrow ignored Time.
Watercress panicked. They had only covered brief introductions regarding behavior, protocol, and mannerisms, but Watercress hadn't prepared Teleost to come up with any verbal content on his own. How could I overlook such a vital detail? Master Watercress has taught me many arts and trades throughout my life, not just healing magic. I've been working masonry jobs on the road to earn some extra gem and fencing after evening meals. If anything, I've hoped her calluses twice as thick.
Watercress relaxed slightly. He hadn't wanted to seem relieved because he hadn't wanted to appear stressed. It's lucky Teleost is a swift thinker.
What was the patient afflicted with that you were treating in Gia? I heard it was so bad you couldn't even present yourself to Low King Diaspor or his low healing mage.
Yarrow tested.
Watercress tensed, uncertain if the lad would come up with something. I actually did meet Low King Diaspor, but I didn't have a chance to meet Master Jasmine. There was some terrible stomach ailment going around that I had to attend to, so I didn't have time. Teleost came off as being disinterested in the conversation, and more absorbed by the snack and drinks available on the table. How'd you treat them? Yarrow asked.
Watercress resisted shuddering. He'll undoubtedly be discovered. A fisherman's son wouldn't know that.
I tried both peppermint and ginger. Neither of those worked, so I cast a warming spell.
Teleost claimed several cheese samples and cupped them in his hand as he popped each in his mouth, one after the other. Watercress had no idea how the boy knew what to say, but he was optimistic that Teleost would succeed in fooling the mage. Yarrow's expression fell with each response he provided.
Did the heat work? Marginally. To be honest, I suspect they ingested trace amounts of poison. The Crusade's been plagued with Vahantry attacks since we set out, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least.
Watercress could have hugged Teleost. He was doing a marvelous job, saying the right points and building up the perfect picture. He wanted to hug Basil too, for being the mastermind behind Teleost's knowledge. Yarrow seemed set on confirming Basil's identity.
You two.
Anates and Brusite looked up from their drinks.
Yes? Do you know this young man?
This would likely be the proper time to become annoyed with Yarrow's questioning. Yarrow, what are you doing? Watercress asked.
Let them answer the question,
Yarrow said, a curl coming to his lips.
That's Basil. We have plans to explore the city with him after this,
Anates said, as though Yarrow were losing his mind. At that, Yarrow turned to another stranger behind him.
You, who is this?
Watercress tried to protest again, but Yarrow held up a finger to him with a glint in his eye. Jasper had been the one Yarrow stopped.
Watercress wasn't certain if the soldier understood the situation. Sweat settled in the small of Watercress's back and glued his tunic to his underarms. The healing mage's apprentice, Basil.
I suppose that you are friends with him too.
Yarrow nearly spat. Jasper shook his head. Can't say I am.
Was there a stomach illness going around when you were in Gia?
A few of my friends had it. It was bad for a while. I told them not to eat the garbage growing out of the ground, but everyone was starving by then. It's a miracle the whole crusade didn't get sick. Then Jasper left. Yarrow fixated on Princess Celestine as she approached.
Princess.
If Watercress was uncertain how Jasper would respond, he was even less confident about Cosirai's intentions. She could doom them all and steal Basil away for herself.
Master Yarrow, Master Watercress, Basil, Thyme, Anatase, Brucite,
she shouted a knowing smile to Watercress. For the strain his heart bore, at the end of the ordeal, Watercress swore he'd have a soothing cup of chamomile and lavender tea. Yarrow had grown desperate and asked one more person, this time a stranger. The group exchanged glances. Watercress held an anxious breath. Yeah, that bunch is always spending time together, the unknown soldier said. That one's Basil. To their collective relief, the soldier must have only believed Teleost was Basil by his clothes and company. Yarrow, this is foolish. This is Basil. I don't know what more proof you could require, Watercress said. Yarrow glanced around at the judgmental stares and hastily left the table. Through a mouthful of exquisite delicacies, Teleost said, What an asshole.